If you've ever felt like the world is getting louder, but meaningful conversation is getting quieter, then this episode is for you.
Driven by purpose, fueled by passion, my words got power, my thoughts have action, motivation, stay gracious, that's greatness, be audacious, motivation, be audacious, innovation, be audacious, inspiration, be bold, motivation, be audacious.
Welcome to the Audacious Living Podcast, where our goal is to challenge perspectives, encourage growth, and inspire you to think a little deeper about the life and world around you. Today, I'm joined by co-authors Kevin Dolan and Peter Calfee. They wrote Hijacked, and we're here to discuss critical thinking, communication, education, leadership, and personal responsibilities. And we're going to touch on what happens when people stop listening to one another, whether you agree with everything discussed or not. I think conversations like this truly matter because they challenge us to stay curious, ask better questions, and engage more thoughtfully with the world around us. So now we've got the table all set. Let's turn to our conversation with Kevin and Peter. Enjoy. Well, greetings both to you, Kevin and Peter. Thank you for joining me here on the Audacious Living Podcast. I appreciate you both for taking the time to do this.
We're certainly glad to be here, and we really appreciate you inviting us on to this podcast, and we anticipate just a wonderful experience. So thank you for having us.
Again, I appreciate you for being here. Much time, and I oftentimes say that for me, to be able to engage in these types of dialogues that can potentially help individuals get on a better place in life or change your trajectory, I really do think it's a blessing. And I don't say that to sound corny or anything like that. It's really truly the core of what I believe. I think and again, we don't know at the end of this conversation what people will resonate with, what they'll take, what they'll use to make a difference. But it very well can. It's a very common scenario. But so be a part of that process is just a very, very cool thing. And so I love doing that. You're in a similar space because you've created some really key messages through your book Hijacked, and we'll get into that a bit deeper with respects to how we as individuals sort of move through our society with our eyes wide open, so to speak, right? And the understanding and questioning whether it be societal structures or things that are around us that have always been there. It's funny. I think I as humans, we get into, it's really easy for us to get into automatic thinking and for us to go on autopilot, right? And because I get it, it's an easier thing to do. Like I don't have to put up these long spreadsheets for every decision I make. Like if I want cereal, I should have a bowl of cereal and pick the one that's there and go, right, kind of a thing. But for some people, it is a bit of a process. But again, the automatic thinking, so it's good, but then it can work against us because we will just sort of accept what's happening and maybe not question the manner that we should. And so I think that's kind of, and so when you think about some of the themes of your work that you're encouraging people, it's very much along the lines of sort of questioning systems, norms, even values, but as well, and critically looking at that. I think I've sort of set the table here. Perhaps I'll open up the floor to have you both come in because you also have very unique backgrounds. One sort of finance and looking at systems from that standpoint, and one more from a leadership standpoint that has been in aviation, right? So maybe I can open the floor.
Kind of interesting in my perspective. Peter and I met on Veterans Day 3.5 years ago, 11/11/22.
Okay.
And we didn't know each other. Peter sat down next to me at this luncheon, and we started a conversation. And so the staff was kind of anxious for us to leave at the end because we had stayed well beyond lunch.
Right.
and so we started talking about things. And a couple of weeks later, we talked about writing a book. And so we said, well, we'll investigate it and start into it. And we agreed to do that, and it developed from there. And then when you start to write a book, you say, well, we know that we've got these concepts, but what is it that we're trying to, just as you say, you're excited about bringing this information to people to form their own opinion. our first chapter is critical thinking. And
Right.
that's the most important thing. You and I could have actually different opinions and we could agree on every issue. The difference being waiting. I could say that your issue has value, you say my issues have value, but if my set of issues that I place higher value on adds up to a sum that is a greater quotient than yours and the way you weight yours, we can have different opinions. We'd never needed to offend each other in a discussion. We have different opinions, but we were both educated more by talking through the issues together.
And oddly, that goes right to the core in that critical thinking chapter. You mentioned it just now. Think,
Yeah.
question, speak. Not in any other order. Think, draw upon all your experience, what you feel, what you've experienced, what your gut's telling you. Question your premises. Question,
Yeah.
am I responding to a symptom or the actual problem? And rationalize that in a way that makes sense so that it's part of the continuum of your life, which
Right.
speaks to not only critical thinking, but it speaks to the education chapter 2. It speaks to religion, faith, and values, which is a good friend of mine said, Pete, I didn't know you were so religious. And I said, this is a 30,000 foot view. This is how people have lived since Plato, Cicero, Aristotle. They have
Right.
a life plan of action. They know the golden rule. They have a tribal connectivity as to how they interface with their people. All of that leads you to come to a conclusion as to how do you respond, Kevin's point, to any sort of issue that presents itself. The problem we found today is that, and you can see it, I heard it today driving over here, Gen Zers and younger people are flowing into churches. They
Okay.
want a continuum. They want the eternal truth. Whatever it is, however they define it, some measure or bar as to how they're going to live their life. And that's all we were talking about. And that's existed since the start of humankind. And without that, you're in a corner with
Yeah.
Nietzsche in a meaningless existence. And that is where, frankly, think, question, speak. We've
Sure.
gotten into trouble the last 25 years because people then have no default. Their only
Gotcha.
response is to create their own identity, their own belief
Mhm.
structure, which becomes identity politics.
Selfish.
Selfish, which then is projected on other people. Audley, I have my view. I don't think you believe in my views, so I really am not interested in your view. It's
Right.
my view. My view
Yeah.
is the most important. And we hear that day after day. You can't have a conversation. I can't speak to you about, what's going on in your life, and you can't speak to me about. You never get there. You never meet in the middle.
I
And I think that
think the word selfish is a good one, right? Because
Yeah.
it's about I, and there's what we seem to forget is that growth doesn't happen in a silo by myself, right? It does
Right.
not happen. It's by the interaction, the commingling, the different perspectives, the viewpoints. You think of a board meeting, and if everyone around the table all said the same thing, how dynamic is that conversation? Right. But
right.
then you think of that person that raises their hand and go, oh, well, wait a second, or let's add another element to it, right? Not someone from a cultural perspective. Hey, have we put this in consideration? Have we thought about how this can impact? And you can open up eyes, and the beauty of it around that is literally one spark sets off another. So
Exactly.
my idea will lead to yours, and yours will go, yeah. So that's jump back in here. I know you're dying to jump in. My thoughts.
It speaks to then the fourth chapter of the book. It speaks. This is all very linear for us. It speaks to, okay, I had to create my own identity. I'm in the corner with Nietzsche. I live a meaningless existence. I haven't found church or religion or faith or values yet.
Value system.
So I'm creating that myself. Now the temptation is, well, this certain history, this certain set of facts from 20 years ago, this certain set of facts from 5 years ago, that doesn't fit my identity. So now I have to modify what real history was. And then I have to codify it to my own personal identity rules. And suddenly, modification, codification, history's been rewritten. And we don't have history anymore. We have George Orwell, 1984. And so that just compounds the problem.
Right.
You got to blow that up before you can get real truth, real communication.
It's interesting. I meant to say it last night and didn't at the engagement, but Elon Musk talks about artificial intelligence, and he says that for his Grok model, he wants absolute truth. Now, in absolute truth, it's just what Peter's talking about. In history, you don't alter history because you want people to walk away with a message feeling good about
Right.
something. No. What was history? History had a lot of mistakes being made. It's like the statues being torn down. What do they represent? Well, they represent this country. This country was
Yes.
founded. Independence was the Declaration of Independence was aspirational. The Constitution had many compromises in it, so that the 13 colonies could agree to a constitution and
Yep.
therefore live under a single constitution. It had mechanisms for changes which needed to be done and did occur over time, much more longer than we would like to take. But it succeeded in getting us started. So when you've got a statue of somebody, is that saying this is the best person that ever lived? No.
No.
It's a historical event that he's responsible, that he was involved in,
Sure.
or a life of behavior or whatever that we can learn from. Both
Right.
the good things a person might have done and the bad things a person might have done. But
Right.
to take the statue down is a waste of time. It hurts.
It's really just taking today's events as you interpret them and project them on 100 years ago or 200 years ago and say, oh my gosh, that's not the events I live right here today. So I got to change that 200 years ago. No, it's the continuum. It's the flow. It's the gradual enhancement and growth of the civilization. That's
Yeah.
what you're going.
I understand and recognize it because as everything, as we know, there's two sides to every story, right? And so you have those on the other side. Well, let's use the statue example, for example, right? They'll look at that statue and say, well, yes, those statues represented these things, but also represented the pain that we experienced.
Right.
And that's something that's a reality for me. So now it becomes, okay, so do we take the statue down or not? Like, who's right or who's wrong? And because it's not about right or wrong, it's about perspectives. And I think the conversations more should be, okay, this is our history. Own every piece of it. Tell all the story. Now, where do we go from here, right?
Perfect.
That's perfect, because mankind, we are here for a nanosecond in the global history. People want change to occur because they think the world ought to be this way today.
Yeah,
So
good
I
luck.
want my way in this nihilistic process that Peter's talking about. They want to change now.
Sure.
I look at this process, as does Peter, that mankind evolves. So it's this historical
right.
perspective of what has occurred in the past that helps us
That's right.
gradually make these changes. And
Yep.
that's what's so important. Is
Well,
that
the other reality to this is that the changes, the end state, wherever you see this going to be, that might not even happen in your lifetime, because the changes
Exactly.
to get to this point where we're at, that didn't happen overnight either. So you think of the analogy of turning an ocean liner, right? Like, it takes some time.
How long did it take to get to Lincoln and, freeing the slaves? I mean, 1776, 1860, it's almost a century, 1865.
Right.
But and the Declaration of Independence said all men are created equal. Now, it takes almost a century to recognize the phrase from the Declaration of Independence. That doesn't make sense. But guess what? Mankind evolved. They had a society. The economic functionality of that society in 1776 worked a certain way, continued into the early 1800s. People wanted to hold on to their old form. Okay, well, now you've got a little bit of conflict here. But so where are we today? The United States is still not perfect. It's still evolving.
Well, you're right.
We can take what we've learned.
Yes, that's right.
And appreciate the fact that we have evolved. We have improved. People do care. We elected the first Black president of the United States, Barack Obama. Now, I didn't agree with him on numerous aspects, but I was very happy that there wasn't any racial bias by the whites saying we can't have that. It was like, no, he's the president of the United States. He is president of all of us. Now, you can talk about policies, you can talk about that, and that would be a reasonable discussion. We don't have to say that we support it. I support the fact, I would support Thomas Sowell in an instant. He's 97 years old. He's a giant in economists. He went to Chicago under Milton Friedman and other Nobel laureates at the Chicago School of Economics,
Sure.
and it's an incredible place. And he has got the pithiest statements, and yet his own culture has tried to downplay him, not pay attention to him because it doesn't fit their agenda.
Right.
And so people that have done some academic research and stuff, etc., have not done it as thoroughly as him. And he bases his work on empiricism, which is the study of data. So if he has a theory, he says, does the data back up the theory?
And the data is exactly, Audley, of what you've said throughout these past few minutes. Starting, middle, beginning, end.
Sure.
You put a spotlight on each and every one of them. You said it yourself. Bring all the facts together. They're not these facts that I put in this case. They're all the facts.
It's empirical, right? You look at everything, yeah.
You look at everything.
That's exactly right.
And you respond, but that doesn't mean you throw out the baby with the bathwater. You've got to acknowledge that certain things do last generation over generation.
They do. I think what's happened to her. I think we're on the same page here. But I think the piece that we often forget about is that there is a constant evolution. So the decision that you make today. I'll tell you a funny story to kind of to illustrate this. But the decision that you make today is for today. So when I was a kid, our family went to church, right? And every Sunday, my mom brought me to church. I went through my shoe, shoes. I tore them apart. I was a rambunctious kid. I always struggled wearing shoes, right? And so she decided one day that she was going to reserve a pair of shoes. And they called them my Sunday shoes. I was only ever allowed to wear them on Sundays, no other day of the week. Well, I grew up with this Sunday shoes mentalities. I'm in my 40s and I still have Sunday shoes. And I remember one day going, why can't I wear these shoes on a Wednesday or a Friday or a Thursday? Why is it only on a Sunday? Well, because the shoes, because in my mind, they weren't. Are you there still? I thought that was frozen. In my mind, that was the only day I could wear these shoes. Now, that rule of Sunday shoes, it wasn't put in place to hurt me. It wasn't put in place to be detrimental. It served its purpose for that time because I needed to have it. But as you move forward, I don't need them as a grown man anymore. So the point really is that there's an evolution process to this. And I took a cute way of getting to that point, right? But it's an evolution. And so the decisions that you make today are for today. That doesn't mean they're going to serve you the rest of your life.
And the evolution does, and we've proven that we all would agree that there are certain things that don't get thrown overboard, that don't get shed, that don't get left behind. And I think you'll laugh at this one. There was a baseball coach out at Cal Poly named John Scalinos. Never heard of him. He taught in the 80s, 1980s. But he used baseball and home plate as a metaphor for his family, for his community, for his students, for his faculty, for all his assistant coaches. Accountability, responsibility. We do not change the size of home plate.
Right.
Because the pitcher's not so good today. No, the pitcher better get better or he remains a bad pitcher. But the plate stays the same. There are some eternal truths that don't disagree with evolution.
Correct.
The eternal truths are augmented, but you can't keep shifting the rule book every day of this week as long as it's the continuum of rules.
And that
we'll be on this constant wheel.
That gets at the process of how do you look at this? People can be coming in and all of a sudden, they're throwing out, I want this, how do I change this? And they even can be working positively towards saying, I want to change it. But there are litmus tests that help you analyze whether or not the changes you would like to make sense.
Gotcha. Yeah.
And there's 4 of them that we use. Okay. One is consistency. If a person says, I want this, but then you point out that it is extremely inconsistent with B, A does not really work that well. So consistency is hugely important. Sustainability. Oh, I want to do this. We're just going to throw money at this and it'll work and it'll be a great solution. Well, if this problem needs solving, but it's not absolutely solved, you have to continue contributing that money every year. Can we sustain that rate of contribution? No, if you can't, that's not a good solution. So consistency, sustainability. Within the economic system, the capitalism harnesses the power of pursuit of self-interest, a very key phrase, I believe. And if you're harnessing the power of pursuit of self-interest, you want to use an incentive and motivation system that captures that. Well, capitalism, in my opinion and Peter's opinion, is the best. And Winston Churchill said it great, applying to political democracy, but it applies to capitalism too. He said, when asked the question, "What
it's the worst system in the world?"
Yeah, what do you think of democracy? Well, I think it is the worst system in the world, except for all the rest. And so it's like, okay, not perfect, but boy, the other ones just aren't as good as this.
Right,
so what does that tell you? Evolution once again plays its head. And so when you're working on this thing, well, you apply that to he applied it to politics, okay? I applied it to capitalism just there. But you say democracy. What do you think of that? Well, it's the worst. It's terrible, but except for all the rest. Well, once again, and then how did the United States get to where it got to today in terms of being the top superpower in the process? Well, the United States is not perfect. It's the worst, except for all the rest. It kind of goes across how we're positioned, what the economy we use. Capitalism, it goes across the nature of
the sustainability and consistency applies to really macroeconomic issues like socialism and communism. They really, in your heart, when you're in the first pew of your church, and I'm there, and I'm faith and praying, I want the best for everyone. That means everyone should participate. Everyone should have everything. And the problem is reality interjects itself into that. And if you believe what Ayn Rand wrote in Atlas Shrugged, frankly, socialism is a slow death by suicide. Communism is a fast death by murder. Very, very straightforward. Neither one work. And they don't work because of lack of sustainability and lack of consistency. It's one power takes all. And you do that. And one other quote that Thomas Sowell, whom we love, massive, giant intellect, he said, it's amazing that two young men in England who never worked a day in their life picked up the concept of the proletariat of the worker and spoke glowingly about it in a book that reflected none of their background whatsoever, Marx and Engels, and never had tried it out. But boy, this sounds good. Give to everybody what they deserve from everybody who has it.
Well, and look at communism itself. It has consistently failed. Yeah. So if you want to look at consistency, it also is a measuring stick. And in the process of seeing it, look at what's happening today. We go in. There's transitions among the different forms of government systems, etc. There's democracy. There's democracy, could be tyranny of the majority, and you've got a republic, which adds some more wrinkles into it for the purpose of being more inclusive in participation. We could go into some detail if you cared, but you've got monarchies, theocracies, communism, socialism, dictatorships, military juntas, all these different forms. Well, look what happened in Cuba. Batista is not running the country well. People get upset. Okay, well, now they're going to have a civil war. They did. Castro won. And what did he put in place? Well, first off, he killed most of his competition so that as a communist operation, he was the dictator.
Right.
And so you see the most in these different forms of communism. Mao, eventually, he was a dictator. He was at the top of the Fed. Now, when he died, the system came back into play. Communism, find the other guy in the party. And Stalin, the same thing in Russia. How many people did they kill? I think Stalin killed like 10 million Russians over in his period of time in Russia. Mao, I think, and it was responsible for 30 million deaths in China. Now, what would we say in the United States if you took their size population, applied the percentage to America? If we're at 350 million or whatever, call it a 5%. That's going to be 17.5 million people that died because of our policies. At what point in time would our population react? I mean,
Right.
it's just
Right.
crazy. So
Got you.
These are the eternal truths that we're trying to get across using the practical examples of history.
So then, okay. I guess I hear what you're saying loud and clear, and maybe want to go back and um, ask, and either of you, was there a moment that you sort of realized there's something bigger happening under the surface, or what was there? Maybe I'm questioning
I think there was. I think, Audley, that clearly when nobody can talk to anybody, when everybody's screaming at everybody,
right,
when everybody gets up from a conversation, I can't talk to you, I can't talk to you, and leaves, something's broken. Something's not sustaining.
These are well-educated people. Even Ivy League educated people can
right.
take on this tribal behavior. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, we both had the good fortune of going to top schools, and so we were thrust into intellectual environments where
Right.
we debated, and there wasn't any safe space in the process. Well, now there is, and people have gotten tribal in their approach to things. And you say, well, how are we going to solve problems if we can't talk to each other?
Sure.
And that's where we're really focused on education, because that's the focus of historical analysis since time immemorial. Education always allows for the growth of a civilization. And those studies have been done as recently as the 1980s. Education,
Yep.
education. When that goes wacky, when that gets hijacked to
Sure.
teach to the test, to teach Common Core, to have you memorize, to not have you learn, to not have you think critically,
Right.
then that is how education is hijacked. The same applies to religion, faith, and values. It applies to history.
The same approach, right?
Gets hijacked, and boy, suddenly politics. Well, we got to take care of this problem. So politics grabs economics and shoves it under it, and suddenly you have communism and socialism, all under the guise of we're fixing things. All got hijacked, and in our book we tried to emphasize how did that happen, so we don't do it again, and how do we fix it as we see it maybe beginning to happen. That's the reason for the book. That's the reason for the name. That's the reason for the flag upside down on the cover. Distress. We are about to lose our republic that delivered more than any other system in the history of humankind, delivered wealth and distribution of economic gain to more people over more centuries than ever before around the world.
Got you.
And so if we believe that education is the most important aspect, and Peter and I do, the difference between being educated, which is, and critically thinking, is how to think.
Yep.
Indoctrination, and that currently we're in a state of well over impacting education with indoctrination. They're not teaching the children how to think. They're teaching them what to think. That the difference between that couldn't be more stark. It is absolutely imperative that we get back to teaching people how to think, form their own opinions.
Well, this is exactly what it is. I think we each, we each are on I oftentimes frame it like we're on an individual pathway, our life, right? And
Agreed.
What's on our path will be ours, and certainly what's happening over there might be similar, and perhaps we can glean or learn some things. But at the end of the day, what we have in front of us is ours, and I think that's where the personal responsibility comes in. Particularly, and again, I think we've made it abundantly clear that there's brokenness that needs to be addressed or fixed, right? And so, I think that's where the personal responsibility comes in, and how you do that in that kind of structure system.
That's perfect phrase.
And Audley, that ties right into the think, question, speak, and that ties right into looking at what you get from your computer or AI or AGI or ASI. You have to remind yourself that, at least to date, those providers of information give you knowledge.
Sure.
They don't give you wisdom. Wisdom is what happens with your gut and your brain, connecting that interstate of gut and brain to make sure you can think, question, and then speak as to what is on that continuum of knowledge that is consistent, sustainable, and so forth.
And then also what's relevant to me, what do I need, what is useful.
Absolutely.
Like it's almost a bit of a matrix that we've got to go through personally, right? Before we come to a final
Very true.
conclusion on
Very
something,
true.
right?
That's what it is. It's a three-dimensional matrix.
Yeah,
It's a complex. It's take it in economics, price point discovery. It's an economic phrase, but what is it? Price point discovery is the process of billions of people in this world every day make economic decisions.
sure.
They're going to acquire something, they're going to employ their labor to do something. Employing their labor, they get something from that. They want to purchase a service, they want to purchase a product. But the free market allows individuals to improve upon product if the original people hadn't thought of it. They change the product, reduce the price, improve the quality of the product.
Yep.
That's a great improvement to value. So the activity of making decisions is price point discovery. That happens trillions of times. Can that occur freely in a controlled form of government, centrally planned communism, social, whatever? No, it's the free market that allows it to happen. Now, is the free market perfect? No. Once again, you could
Sure.
identify issues in the free market, the capitalism, that there are problems. Let's improve on the best model.
So the process of change and self-improvement and evolution, we're all on the same page here in terms of this necessary part of this process. There is a piece where when we talk about personal responsibility where I as an individual need to have the permission to think differently, to question, and permission not only to myself, but maybe even from others around me. Because again, if everyone around the table is saying, here's a path forward, I mean, this podcast is now the Audacious Living. There's an element of audacity I'm going to need to have to stand up and say, well, no, I think differently, and here's why. That's not an easy thing for a lot of people. That's a huge obstacle to overcome. So I'm just wondering, just generally, your thoughts on how you develop, again, the inner fortitude of strength to be able to question what's out there.
Well, I think you said two phrases that are key, but it comes back to a chapter:
Mm-hmm.
self-improvement and personal responsibility. Both
Mm-hmm.
of those were your phrases. They're excellent phrases. What do they reflect? If I have a sense of personal responsibility, how did I develop that sense? I developed it by developing a value system.
Yep.
What's the anchor in the value system? A value system has to be anchored. Now, why are young people going in colleges and in college and that age going into church in droves apparently right now? They're going there because they want purpose in life.
Okay.
Now, what gives purpose? Well, I would say this: people can acquire all kinds of toys. We are familiar with people that are fairly well off, and that's fine, and they may have satisfying lives in their concept. But if they're not additionally thinking about how they can give back, how they can help society to improve, how they can contribute to the evolution of man, then they are not participating fully, and the nation and the globe is not developing in as opportunistic manner as it could.
Sure.
You have to be accountable and responsible. Those are words lurking right around the periphery of what you said.
Yep.
And if you're accountable and responsible, the plate doesn't change its size. You've got to be a better pitcher, or you certainly have to be a better athlete to be responsive to the fact. The plate is the plate, and that hasn't changed since 1950. So those you see how it
absolutely is interconnected, and I agree with you. I'll even use the word courage, because that is a part of it. Courage is a huge part of what we're talking about here, because again, like who if you ask most people, do you want to be the only one on the board around the boardroom table that thinks differently? I don't think you have a lot of people shooting up their hands saying, yes, me. So it takes courage to do that.
Yes.
And there are words, we used them last night. We used them in our presentation.
I just brought it up.
Selfless behavior, dependability, consistency, determination and perseverance, communication skills, integrity. All of these relate to leadership.
Yes.
And there is Drucker, Peter Drucker, economist that helped Japan after World War II, major guru in economics in the 50s and 60s. He said, leadership is
management is doing things right. Leadership is doing the right things.
Yes.
Now, that's a great twist.
It is a great twist. And that's, again, this continuum. We're not telling what people should believe. They've got to uncover that themselves, but they've got to use those protocols that we outlined of how you get causality, sustainability, consistency to get to thinking, questioning, and then speaking at your board meeting if you're the only one.
And if they're educating people, they're teaching them how to think. Sure. Everything we're saying right here is the application of manner of thinking. Okay, but it's not dictating it. I'm not saying someone has to think a certain way. I'm saying you have to think your own way. But we want to give you the tools to think broadly and deeply about topics and then be able to communicate. Well, what's that take? Critical thinking, education, religion, faith, values, history. Then what are they applied to? They are applied to government systems and economic systems. Now you have a discussion about the total platform and the ending result being in the political system and economic system and saying, hey, I'm ready now to have a discussion about any particular topic.
And we're slow learners because that took 3 years.
only 3, not bad.
Yeah, 3 years to write it. It only took us 75 years to learn these things. So we're not youngsters.
Again, for me, I just go back to the evolution, how important it is to understand. And so instead of trying to race things to speed up the change, what happens now, so I can say, look what the change I caused. It's more like, look at the change I sparked, right?
Well, let me go back to the beginning where Elon Musk said that his Grok model, the purpose is to find absolute truth. And people said, well, these algorithms, other people want the algorithm to kind of push people in a certain direction.
Right.
And he said, well, if I'm telling the absolute truth and another model tells something that is patently false, then where's the credibility? The credibility is in the model that doesn't seek to control your thought. It's the model that tells you what the absolute truth is, and you're able to draw your own conclusions with all the input in a process. And so you've got all the other AI models that are not doing what Grok is doing. They're the phrase I just used, their algorithms have bias to them. I mean, as an example, Audley, I mean, you like this probably in a sense, when they talked about the Vikings invading. Now, were there any black guys in the Vikings back in this 1400s, 1600s? There weren't any. Right. And yet the artificial intelligence process introduced pictures of Vikings, but they wanted it to be diversified. Well, it's not about want. We're learning. The United States went from being a country, like we said at the Declaration of Independence, to one in the Civil War over an important issue that we've made progress, and we've elected our first black president. We've made progress. Now, are we doing everything that's right? No. We can argue about a lot of things. But it's appreciating the evolution.
I think evolution is a big part of that process. And even when you talk about AI, I mean, that is an entirely different conversation, because you could write another book on just that alone and sort of where that's going. And maybe I just sparked an idea. Maybe it will. But the point the point to AI, which is an interesting one too, is in fact, I kind of go back to your title of your book. Like, I think AI can actually hijack people's thinking, right?
Yeah, correct.
I don't care which model we're talking about, right? I think at the end of the day, if I am changing how let's use a student in school, for example, right? If I'm changing how I approach my work because I just ask someone, it'll spit the right answer out to me, therein lies, okay, so the way you're thinking is now different. Are you being taught to examine data that you received? Or is it the assumption that it's telling me the truth, so it's good? And I think that's sort of some of where we need to adjust our thinking when it comes to our AI usage.
in the educational process where we were raised a long time ago,
Mhm.
they would teach you, first of all, you learn to read, write, all that stuff. Okay, fine. Now you apply your reading, and they're saying, okay, what's your thought process on this? The best
Right.
teachers were not telling you that I told you this in the class, and so I'm asking a question. That's the answer. No, what the best teachers would say, develop your ideas to come to your conclusion on this topic. Now the person is thinking, and they're
Yes.
displaying their talent to
Yep.
think through a topic.
Yes. 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 I remember when I was a kid, we used to do long division, right? And it didn't matter if you got the right answer or not. What was the process and the formula that you used to get there? And so if it's
Very
the question's worth 3 marks, I was guaranteed at least 1, right? Because
Yeah,
forget if the answer was right or wrong.
yeah, right. No, you could have gotten most of the problem, and on a difficult one, you could have gotten through 80% of it. Well,
Yeah.
okay, I understood the 80%. I made a mistake here, and so I got something wrong. But by displaying the thought process, the teacher has more knowledge about where they've fallen short in
Yes.
helping you develop your full thought continuum. And that's what it's about. And
Yeah.
in the end, we become adults, and we have to have our own opinions.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. I'm curious about the feedback that you've gotten thus far. So I'm imagining this positive, but those maybe who are critics are not in agreement or see it differently. Have you heard anything? And I'm curious what their position is.
Well, we had one podcast. This is the fourth one. We're trying. We want people interested, but it's not about the sales for our financial benefit. It's about getting the word out, and so it's a question of where is the influencer that's going to say that people need to read this book. And in one of the podcasts, the person kind of wanted to debate us and point out we're being wrong. I don't look at what we're presenting as being untribal in nature. I don't look at it as trying to say that you've got to follow what we're doing. No, that's indoctrination. We're trying to give everybody the tools. And in the process of giving everybody the tools to help the thought process, we're hoping that through the social media and that type of thing, that some influencers will get out there and say, this is a must-read book. And it can have an impact because now people can start thinking for their own on a larger scale. Probably the most consistent thing that could happen would be used in colleges and high schools. And then you'd have everybody would get have to deal with it in terms of part of the curriculum. But prior to that, it's got to reach a level of notoriety where it achieves some demand. If it doesn't achieve it, that's great. Peter and I have made our effort to give back. This
Sure.
is our effort to give back.
Okay.
I think we heard some responses. Certainly last night. Certainly we're going to speak in May to 150 women at a political get-together. We've had 4 podcasts now. We have 8 more we're doing. We've been on radio shows. They're attached to our website. We even had one podcaster, while we were talking like this, the person got so excited they ordered our book and told us after the fact, I've just ordered your book. I need to know more. So I think the enlightenment has been warm to us, that connectivity of these ideas and how they're all integrated like a tapestry. That has reignited a thought process.
Sure.
People even last night said, I got to go back to college.
And the one thing I want to add in on the structure of the book, it's only 109 pages, but as a talented lawyer told me last night, it was pretty deep, and it took a long time to deal with all the things being presented. However, we've got as much space in the book in appendices, but the appendices are numbered by chapter. So if it applies to chapter 1,
Sure.
it's numbered 1 A, B, C, 1A, 1B, 1B, 1C. If it's chapter number 3, it's 3A, 3B, 3C. Some chapters don't have appendices. So if a person wants to read the book, they need to know that, because there's some very useful things. And Thomas Sowell, like I said, the black giant economic guy in the Hoover Institute in Stanford, he's got a book about him, Maverick by Jason Riley. I would recommend that to anybody. it talks about his background, how he got to where he got. He started out. Milton Friedman said he was a communist to some people that were thinking about giving him money to do the PhD program in Chicago.
Yeah.
But he'll come around.
Gotcha.
And he did.
Gotcha. Well, I appreciate that, the insight. So yeah, again, I was asking just because I'm curious about the feedback, and I know it's still early in your journey. Whenever you sort of get into topics where you're, I guess, challenging people to think about things differently,
Right.
Sometimes other things come up, right? And so
it was so good that he had to read it a second time.
there we go.
He said, I read it once. I thought it was great, but there's just too much there. I've got to go back and read it again.
We had
Now,
a lot of people that bought it for
surprising.
their children. They bought it for their grandchildren.
Sure.
They bought it for
Sure.
Christmas and birthday gifts. Now, that's just passing on a fact. I don't know whether that's true or not. I suspect it
No, I
was.
understand. No, I get it. Yeah. I get what you're saying. Like, your point's made very, very clear, and I appreciate that. I'm wondering if for listeners who are listening, if there are, I don't know, 2 or 3 things, they could start doing today to become more engaged and aware. Obviously, your book is one of those things they can do for sure, but are there other things that they can do to be more engaged, aware citizens?
Well, I think the key is to be open-minded. We've got in our tribal approach to life that we've kind of gone into very inappropriately. We're shutting down the communication.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to be able to go to people of different cultures, backgrounds, race, everything else, and we've got to talk to them as a fellow man. We're all human beings.
Yeah.
That's the nature of the statement in the Declaration. All men are created equal. Okay. Now, in applying that means that I ought to be able to talk to you, Ali, and I ought to be able to talk to anybody else. Do I have a fear? Yeah, I have a fear. I don't want to offend people.
Sure.
Nothing
sure.
I say do I want to offend. I merely want to stimulate conversation. And in that conversation, I try and leave all kinds of room for different opinion from what I have, because I want to respect it. That's how mankind evolves. Can we get an adequate number of people to believe something such that we move in another direction, change something for an improvement?
Yep.
That's the key.
I would use your term courage, Audley.
Mm-hmm.
Even as a young teenager, early 20s person, to have the courage to, I've thought about this. I've done my thinking.
Yeah.
I've done my questioning, and now I need to speak, and I'm scared to death, and I need to still speak. I need to get that courage and be able to speak in a way that's inoffensive, that still lays out postures of thought, protocols that need to be followed, and have it be reasonable so that I don't offend in that process. I can't control someone's response. That's been part of the problem. But I can demonstrate how you should approach this problem. And more you do that, the more you'll find people engaged. They're intrigued. You have the courage. They don't.
Yes.
They want something of what you've got.
It's
That's
intellectually
right. That's where the inner audacity comes from.
Yeah, that's right. That's a great term.
Very
it's a great title to your program.
Yeah, thank you.
Podcast. And it's been a delight being here, talking to you. Very, very stimulating. And that's all we want to achieve.
Yeah.
This stimulation of discussion with our fellow man.
Well, this is where it comes from, the growth and the development and learnings, right? Because I didn't mention before. I'm based in Toronto, Canada, so I'm not even in the U.S. But the perspective, but to show you, so we've had an entire. You probably didn't even know that, and the reason why is it shows you how much in line that we are. But yeah, different countries, we have different perspective. I have things that I have I've got no concept of some things that you're dealing with, and vice versa. But we still can come together and have discourses, right?
One of my best friends from Toronto, Gordon Cooper, great guy.
One last thing, I don't doubt that he's a great guy because he associates with great people, and I want to ask one last question. It's more like a wish, if you will. If there's one change that about society that you could have done overnight, right? We talked about it's not an overnight process. We talked about this, it's an evolution. But if there was that one thing that you could change overnight, what would that be?
Shut up and listen.
And
not you, Audley. No,
Okay.
people. Shut up and listen.
My term to achieve that would be interest.
Okay.
People should take an interest in this process. It's not only their life,
Right.
it's their children's life, it's their grandchildren's life, it's generations following them from their family that they're never going to know.
Right.
But do they want to leave the best environment possible for the future generations?
Absolutely.
I would think so. I would certainly hope so.
That's it. That's what legacy is, right? And I think I agree with you wholeheartedly. And thank you for that. Give us the full title of the book once again. A copy you can hold up there for people can see it by chance.
Sure, we got it right here. It's Hijacked, Our Republic, Unless We Can Save It.
There we go. There we go. And for listeners that wanted to pick up a copy, where can we send them to grab a copy?
Amazon. You can buy hardback, softback. We're going to have the audio out sometime in April, we expect. It might be the end, but
it's already been recorded. We're just got to get it perfected. That's
right.
All.
And
you guys did the recording? That's awesome.
No, we didn't do it. We had
he wanted me to do it, and I said no. We'll get a professional.
He's got a great voice, so we got a professional guy that could do that. So it's paperback, hardback, Kindle. It's electronic, and then it's going to be an audio too.
And you can put in Hijacked in your browser, and up will come the book. You can put our names in, up will come the book.
And it's the way you look at it is the picture. It's the Capitol building, lightning through the middle, red for the right, blue for the left, and then the flag, the U.S. flag, upside down because we got some issues that need to be addressed.
Well, certainly we'll get people's attention for sure. Guys, I want to say appreciate the time for sure. Again, the stimulating conversation. Again, we spend a lot of time talking about this thing called audacity, and the audacity that you've shown to bring forth a topic that's important, affects everyone, is clear and obvious. So congratulations on that. And again, thank you for being a guest on the Audacious Living Podcast. All right, welcome back. I actually kept thinking about that idea they brought up during the conversation, the difference between being taught what we think versus how to think. There really is a big distinction. And again, whether you agree with everything discussed or not, I think the bigger takeaway is the importance of being willing to ask questions, stay curious, and more importantly, have conversations with the people who may see the world differently than you do, because that's how we grow, learn, and develop. And somewhere along the way, I feel like that's been lost. We've lost our ability to simply listen to one another without immediately choosing sides or forming opinion. And honestly, I think we need more thoughtful conversations right now, not fewer. If you want to learn more about Kevin and Peter, you can check out their book, Hijacked. It's available on Amazon, and of course we got you because we will have it in the show notes below. And if this episode made you think, share with someone else who appreciates meaningful conversations. Thank you so much for joining us here on the podcast, and until next time, keep living life audaciously.
Driven by purpose, fueled by passion, my words got power, my thoughts have action, motivation, stay gracious, that's greatness, be